I'm at Old Dominick Distillery. We're going to be doing a tour and doing a barrel select later. So I'm going to go check it out. Come in and got a bar. Have to go find the gift shop. So here's the gift shop. Got the little mini Glens, rock glasses, neat glass, staves. Same thing you find in pretty much all the different distilleries. So they got a little sample bar back here. I did not know that they released the Hulling Station as well as the Old Dominick brand. So I was told I had to try the duck fat old fashioned. So I ordered one to see how it goes. That is pretty good.
I'm gonna get the first hot chocolate.
All right,
I don't
go
ever
right
pass
ahead.
up anything frozen.
So it's a pretty good old fashioned. It may be the best old fashioned I've ever had. Very sweet. Doesn't have quite as much bitter as, not as bitter as a lot of old fashions are. It's very sweet. So if you come to Old Dominick, try the duck fat old fashioned at the bar. And there's Adam, who told me to try the duck fat old fashioned. If you haven't checked out his channel, Major Zero, you should go do so. He does a lot of hunting. He's from the Memphis area. Okay, the old fashioned was good enough that I had to order a second one. It's actually really good.
I know we're a big group, so if y'all want to kind of come on down, spread out a little bit. Don't be shy. I don't bite all the time. I did get my shots recently. All right, welcome, welcome one more time. Thank you, Clark, for that wonderful introduction. But one more time, my name is Emily. I will be your spirit guide today. All right, and today we're going to show you a couple things, tell you a couple things, and hopefully you remember a couple things, right? So to get us started off, right, we like to talk a little bit about where we come from as a company, right? Really important to talk about our roots, how we got started, that sort of thing. So to start us off, this picture front and center here, I'm not sure if everybody can see, but front and center, that big guy there, that is Domenico Canali. He is our founder. He was actually born in the year 1843 in Italy, kind of along the coastal region. But Italy back then was not the Italy that we know and love today, right? The one that we vacation to, drink our wine, sit on the beach, right? Back then, Italy was broken up into a lot of city-states, constantly fighting, over territory and whatnot. So young Domenico Canali didn't want to stick around and see what kind of occurred because of that fighting and conflict. So at the age of 16 years old, he did what a lot of young men and a lot of people in general did. They actually took a boat to America. Memphis is kind of a growing destination back in the day. It wasn't like a very familiar stop for a lot of people, but for Domenico Canali, he actually had family here. So when he was just a child, just a baby, his uncles actually came here as well by boat and actually started their very own business in town, right? They wanted to live that American dream. So when we flash forward to 1866, After learning everything he could from his family, he decides to come up with his very own company. And he named that D. Canale & Co. Right? So he had very similar beginnings. He did the grocery, did a little distribution, things like that. But what he wanted to do that was a little bit different was he wanted to get into whiskey, right? He wanted to get more into alcohol sales. So he started collecting some bourbon things from people he knew in Kentucky. He started to bottle that in pretty much anything, any container that he could find. Glass wasn't super popular around that point in time, so clay jugs, things like that. He would bottle that, put his logo on it, and start selling it to the public. And you can kind of see some of those bottles, some of those artifacts up here if you wanted to take a look. So, Memphis, having that bad boy reputation, right, that we all know and love, alcohol was definitely kind of the business that people wanted to be in if they wanted to make a living. So he gained popularity very quickly by doing that. So in 1880, he created something called the Old Dominick Toddy. Has anybody here had a toddy before, right? Like a hot toddy? Of course, right? So what he did was he took that whiskey that he had from his cart, he took his fruits, he took his spices, he mixed that all together, and he put it in a bottle ready to serve. So we like to say it's kind of one of those first examples of like a pre-bottled cocktail, essentially, or like a whiskey cordial, if you will. And the original bottle you can kind of see down here as an example. So people loved that sort of thing. It was new, it was unique, it was creative. So he also gained popularity and additional wealth from that as well. So much popularity, in fact, even doctors and pharmacists around town started to take note of that, and they decided to prescribe it as medicine. So not only could you drink it for leisure, but you could drink it for pain and well-being, right? So people loved that. But of course, with all that success, all that fame, all that fortune, right, there has to be a bump in the road. And I'm sure we are all aware of our great American history and that poor bump. Does anybody have any ideas?
Prohibition.
Right, of course. Yes, Prohibition. A very dark time in our past, right? So 1919, that's when that official amendment was signed by the federal government. Actually, 3 days prior to the official signing of that, Mr. Dominick Canale actually passes away. Flash forward to about 2013, 2014. Dominick Canale's actual great-great-grandsons were actually going through some of the warehouses around town here, kind of cleaning up, finding some of these artifacts and such. And would you know, in a box, off in a corner office somewhere, right? Hadn't been touched in almost 100 years. They opened it up and found 3 unopened bottles of that original Old Dominick Toddy, right? I like to say, I'm dramatic, I like to say it was fate, right? That these young men, his family members, were the ones that found these bottles, right? Unopened, untouched. And of course, his young men, what do you think they did? Popped it open, right? Took a little swig. Wasn't as tasty as you might think, right? 100 years old worth of rotting fruit and spice, probably not the best, right? They were able to send that to a lab off in California, and then thanks to modern science, things like that, they could get it reverse engineered. So they could find out some of the original ingredients that were in that beloved Old Dominick Toddy, right? Even without the recipe. So, with those findings and with the help of the master distiller that I had here, her name was Alex Castle. So she was actually the first female master distiller here in the state of Tennessee when she was with us, which we love to brag about. It's quite an achievement. So she's the lady, she's the master distiller. She comes up with the mash bills, right, or the recipes for our spirits. So with the findings from that lab, they were able to kind of reconstruct as close to the original Old Dominick Toddy as they could. So pretty cool. It's a nice little bit of history. So I like to say, when you're drinking the Old Dominick Toddy, you're drinking a little bit of Memphis history, right? Pretty cool. Can y'all hear me okay? All right. Okay, good. I can always be louder. That was a gift given to me by my parents. So this room that we are currently standing in, this is our granary. So this is where we're going to store all of our grains. As you can see, we've got some here on pallets. So we will either get our grains in by the bushel or by the truckload typically. So if they come to us by the truckload, which is going to be mostly our corn and our rye, because we use quite a bit of those for our mash bills. 1,500 bushels about, in fact, which is quite a lot of grain. So one bushel is going to be one of these bags here, just, for imagination's sake. Now, I did mention mash bills a little bit. So mash bill is essentially the recipes for our spirits. So we will change the ratios of grains that we use depending on what we're making. So for instance, our Tennessee whiskey recipe, it's going to be 75% corn content. It's going to be 13% rye, 12% malted barley, right? That's just specific for our Tennessee whiskey. Bourbon's a little different, right? Bourbon has to have at least 51% corn. Ours is 52%. Not sure why we added the extra 1%. I guess we're just overachievers. I don't know. And then 44% rye, the rest malted barley. So different ratios depending on different recipes, that sort of thing. Any questions about the grains or the granary in general? Yeah.
I read recently that so there's something about being malted helps in the process with the yeast.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
So if you notice, if you kind of look at some of our bottles, typically all of our mash bills are going to have our malted barley in it. Right? So the malted barley, when it's heated up in the mash cooker, which is the next step after the mill, there's an enzyme in the malted barley that will help break down those grains even further by like chemical means, and that just gets it ready for fermentation, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So we used to have the contract with MGP. We just recently stopped that contract. So the Healing Station line was the brand that we had with them. So we're kind of slowly filtering. We do have some left over, of course. Takes quite a while to get through, but we're trying to go back to producing only in our facility. Yeah, good question. It is a little cooler in here.
Ash tanks.
Give us a nice little break. Thank you so much.
So that one, the cap is fully
Right through
formed.
here. You're gonna get that smell right off the bat. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneak behind you.
So we got a little bit of bubbling going on.
Feel
in
free
this
to
one
walk
still.
around, look at the different containers.
Are these all the same?
Yes. And all of these containers will contain the same thing. So currently, we'll take a look here. So currently we're making wheat whiskey. So if you're a fan of wheat whiskey, you can try. One of the reasons why this is my favorite part, and I'm sure you will agree, these containers are open for a reason, right? So we can actually put our hands in here, we can taste it, we can try it. So if you are brave enough and you want to stick your hand down in there, grab some of the mash, play around with it. You can taste the mash if you'd like. You can dig down deep enough, you can get the liquid, you can try the liquid if you would want to do that. Experiment a little bit.
So here we have one that's working off.
That's
You can
just
still
the
see all the
sugars from the
bubbles.
grains. So it's
So
going to be
this one
sweeter
probably is
toward the
only a
beginning.
couple of days
It'll get
in.
more bitter toward the end. All those sugars are gone after.
How's it feel?
A little mushy.
So this is distillation. So two of those containers, two of those tanks in fermentation, both 1,800 gallons apiece, will get sent to the beer well behind me, that big silver container. It's just kind of a stop along the way. It's just storage, right, to hold things like a hold tank. Everything will be pumped then from the pipes through the column still right here. This very tall clarinet-like looking structure, right? If you've been to another distillery, I'm sure you guys have seen one before. We do like to recycle the mash, however, right? We live in a city where barbecue is well known, so we like to donate it to local farmers. Farmers will then feed it to their pigs. Then we eat the barbecue, right? So we have good barbecue for a reason, right? We'd like to think.
What is your typical barrel entry proof?
Barrel entry proof. I think it's around 120.
Oh wow.
Do you know
Yeah.
what the white dog comes off the still at?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to ask that. That'd be a good Clark
So you
question.
are just below the maximum
Yeah.
for bourbon.
Yeah. Any other questions?
We all use that straight still.
So we do make vodka, we do make gin as well. So down here, this is gonna be a part of the gin system, right? It has its own like pot still, column still, that sort of thing. That little gray container on the side, that little silver bullet. Our gin is a botanical gin, so there's a little bit less juniper content, right? Because juniper is what you need for a gin. And Alex Castle, when she was coming up with the recipe, added a lot of botanicals in there, like grapefruit, licorice root, ginger root, chamomile, different things to kind of tone down and change the flavor. What was that?
What do you age your bourbon?
Oh, so typically, I think our minimum is going to be 4 to 5 years. We do have that trolley stop series, which is 9 year, and then our cast strength is 6 year. Yeah, so roughly 4 to 5 years. Yeah, yeah. Well, not specifically in this building. In Memphis, yes. We have about 1,000 barrels currently, about aging right above our heads, which is why it's a little warm in here, right? We want that heat to expand and contract the wood, just so it has good contact with the inside of the barrel, that sort of thing. And we use a level 4 char specifically. So there are 5 levels, right? We use a 4, so kind of on the higher end. Just changes the flavor a little bit.
So the Bourbon Together group on Facebook, we're doing this barrel pick. We have a lot of members here.
Y'all should have a poker chip. Y'all should also have like a lapel pin. So everything goes home with you guys except for the poker chip, okay? So what I want y'all to do, eventually we are going to all select, we're gonna crowdsource this barrel pick, okay? I'm gonna give you a lot of particulars about the whiskey and the bourbons in front of us, but first the logistics of this thing. Take your ink pen and write A, B, C, D as far as your samples go, okay? So everyone's sample is the sample on their left. So start A, B, C, D. Whatever you want in your little note section, but that way you don't mess it up. Go A, B, C, D, left to right. What we're gonna do, if y'all done barrel picks before, it's easy when you're sitting around with 2 or 3 people, right? You can sit there, you can say, hey, I like this one, I don't like this one. You kind of work it down, you get rid of 1 or 2 that you don't like the least, and then you settle on the one that you like the most. But what we're gonna do, since we got a big group, we're gonna kind of let everybody taste at their own pace. The only thing I ask is keep your kind of comments and your influence to either the people you came with or just to yourself for that matter. Because what we want to do is we want to make sure this is a true group pick, all right? And we can take as much time or as little time as you want. But once we get started, I'll kind of let you guys start, and then I'll talk about the whiskey in front of you. We'll have time for questions, all that. But eventually what will happen is you guys will get to a point where you like your favorite one. You'll kind of flag me down. You will give me your poker chip. You'll tear off a little piece of that paper in front of you, and you'll write down A, B, C, or D, and you will hand it to me. Under this, I have a fancy system here that y'all can see, but we've got, we're gonna put each of these poker chips in a different bucket, and at the end, we're gonna count them up. We're gonna have a winner, all right? So once again, take your time. There's no right or wrong way to sample the whiskey itself. But once you do settle on a barrel or a barrel you like, let me know. Hand me your poker chip and write, just write the letter on it. So with that, let's jump into it. I will tell y'all as much or as little as the whiskey that you want to know. If y'all, trivia question number 1. So be careful here. Does anybody know the mash bill on our Tennessee whiskey? Raise your hand. First up, right here. Not you.
70, 12, 13.
Boom! We got a winner. The first prize package will go to you. Yes. So one of these, or 2 of these samples are our Tennessee whiskey. All right. 75 corn, 13 rye, 12 malt. That's going to typically have a nice sweet note to it, but still a lot of spice from that rye, and then just a little kind of mellow from the wheat. The second mash bill in front of y'all have is our high rye bourbon. All right, that is our Old Dominick high rye bourbon mash. We're pretty well known for that one. That's a 51% corn, 44% rye, 4% malt. All right.
Yeah,
So
it was too. I thought she
y'all
said
may
52.
be able to already kind of tell the nuances here, but we do have 2 Tennessee whiskeys and we got 2 high rye bourbons. All right. After that, they're very similar in age. All right. The oldest barrel sample you'll have in front of you is 7.5 years. The youngest barrel y'all got is 6.5 years. So we've got a sweet spot in age, all about a year old. And then the highest proof we have in front of us is 127. So we've got one in there that's super hot. And then the lowest proof, on the lower end of the spectrum, we have one is 115. All right. So we've got everything from 7.5 years to 6.5. And from a proof perspective, we've got 127 all the way down to 115. All right. I'm going to shut up for a minute, kind of let y'all sample, work through these the tastes, and we'll go from there. There you go.
Wow, that's tough.
Yeah, so A has some nice baking spice and a great finish. So it's got to be a higher proof one.
You need
I
some
do
more
like
water?
A.
Sure, please, actually, thanks.
All right.
Khalid,
B
what did
is-
we like over here?
Got a little bit of vanilla, but kind of
What's
flat.
your favorite one?
Doesn't really hit on the finish.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah.
C.
I'm glad that.
See? Sure.
See?
Yeah.
Like, that's not happening. This can go.
B is the most, or C is the
You
spiciest.
got the last drop.
That's why.
There's a little bit of toffee
Yeah, 'cause that's about
in the mid
That's
palate.
about it.
It's drying, so
There you
that's
go.
definitely higher proof.
Yeah, we're running low on that one.
That's what I should have done.
Now we got plenty left in the barrel.
D. Man, D drinks really nice. That vanilla and sweetness to that pepper on the finish.
But I just thought. The finish was longer. I just think the finish was.
So I'm down to A and D.
I want to get your take. Do you think you picked Tennessee whiskey or high rye bourbon?
I'm going to see if I can get
Okay,
some more
let's
of
see.
D. I need
Okay.
a little bit more sample.
All right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Can I get a little bit more of D? Is it possible?
When you just tear off a quarter.
Yeah.
So where's your
D. Thank you very much. All right.
Give you my bug.
All right. So A to D. A has the deeper nose.
We got two clear favorites so far. Is it? I don't want to
A's just a
influence you.
lot of baking spice.
These
Plenty of
two are
nutmeg. I mean, that's one of the
In
higher
the clubhouse. Leaders. Well, one's making a charge back.
But D just drinks so well. And has such a great mouthfeel. All right, I've made my decision. I'm going to reveal it at the end. So what are you thinking, Adam?
All right.
I'm kind of leaning toward D.
Okay,
Which one were you leaning for?
so I'm going to reveal at the end my pick to the audience, but my final two
One more.
were A and D.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
C's got a weird.
I got like a spicy toffee on it.
Well, we got like maybe a medicinal, maybe like the rye that nobody likes, not minty, but kind of the other kind of an herbal kind of.
What's your final two?
Did you already get one? Okay, cool. How many stops have you been to?
Probably C and D on the last two.
C and D are your final
Okay,
two?
so you have
Okay.
a passport?
Okay, the noise here was so loud that you couldn't really hear what the other person was saying, but I went to talk to Robert, who is Cutlass High Proof on YouTube, on his thoughts on the picks, and his favorite was A, which he's had a nice caramel, and he thought was higher proof, and I agreed it was higher proof, although I found it to be more baking spice than caramel. I told him and his friend that my last twos were A and D, and his friend agreed with me that D had a great finish, long lasting with a good mouthfeel. And as we were talking about the other samples, I mentioned that I thought C had a kind of toffee note on it. It was like a spicy burnt toffee, and Robert said he didn't get that toffee coffee type note, but his friend agreed with me. He got it as well. So that was it, and from there I moved on. So here I was talking with Buffalo Lou about his thoughts on the samples. His favorites were C and D, and he was going with C. He also liked A, which he thought was a higher rye, which I agreed with. But yeah, he liked C the best.
A and D were my two. The fight against D took the cake by far. I already knew what number one was going to be D. A and C were the ones fighting for second place, but A took it from me.
Okay, what's your name?
Alex.
Alex.
Oh, father, son.
Oh, okay, that's your son. All right, so Buffalo Alex. All right. Thank you, guys.
That was Tennessee
All
whiskey.
right, so you're hearing some of the
High rye
opinions.
bourbon.
My
High
final
rye
two were
bourbon.
A and D, and
Tennessee
I did
whiskey.
choose D.
Raise your hand if you have not put in your vote. I think we're missing a few. We're missing 2 or 3.
So we have a scientifically proven process to determine the winner, and it's called
yeah,
poker
right.
chips in a bucket.
Yeah, right. Results are in. I put chips in for you, troublemakers. God. Don't invite the Memphis guys on y'all's next trip. So this is the C. How many we got? 15 for C. All right, it's gonna be tail of the tape here. While he's counting that up. So C with 15 votes. C is an Old Dominick high rye bourbon barrel. It is 123.11 proof, and it is 6 years and 8 months. So it's one of our older bourbon barrels. It's one of the first rounds of bourbon that we started making. So 123.11. The sample C was 123.11, and it was an Old Dominick high rye bourbon barrel. All right, Caleb's gonna give the counts on sample D. 14. One off. So that makes C our winner. So if you had C, let's go ahead and get A and B's counts. All right, while he's counting those up, sample D, which came in very close second.
Tennessee whiskey.
I'm giving that right now. So
Tennessee
sample
whiskey.
D was an Old Dominick Tennessee whiskey barrel. So that was the 75 corn, 13 rye, 12 malt. That was barrel 208, which was in our early round of production runs, and that was 127 proof,
That one
which
should've
was
won.
a hot boy. I mean, that was a good one. So that was a great, really good barrel. And I think a lot of y'all had it first and second, so it kind of could have gone either way. So that was,
This was a sad price.
all right, 6 for sample A. So sample A was a Tennessee whiskey as well. It was about the same age. It was 7.5 years, and it was 125 proof. And then sample B got 3 votes, and it was a Old Dominick high rye bourbon, and it was 115 proof. And it was the youngest sample of the group. Maybe you guys have a good palate. It was 6.5 years old. Still a great barrel, but I feel like the bourbon barrel y'all picked, that's a winner. That's a damn good barrel. So good, congrats to everybody. Either way would have been a winner. So
C won, D came in second. Anyway, that's how it goes when you're picking with a large group. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but either way, it's going to be a good bottle for the Bourbon Together group. All right, so that was the barrel pick with Bourbon Together at Old Dominick. So stay tuned for more. And remember, the best bourbon or whiskey is the one you like the most.